Donald Trump insists his transition is running smoothly despite reports of chaos inside the transition team. Appointments are reportedly at a standstill after Trump ousted New Jersey Governor Chris Christie as transition chairman and replaced him with Vice President-elect Mike Pence. Pence removed all registered lobbyists from the transition, upholding Trump's vow to drain the swamp in Washington, but also creating a staff shortage. Trump took to Twitter to dismiss the stories and sent top aides to reassure reporters that everything is on schedule.
We feel really good about transition. I actually would just say it's false to say it's not going well. Everything up there is very smooth. I know the president-elect himself, since I talk to him regularly, he's very happy with how transition is going. And from his perspective, he's been presented with any number of choices within each of the agencies and departments, and he's making those tough decisions. I mean, if anything, he has obviously more choices than one to fill in each position. So we have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to many of those different positions.
Gabe DeBenedetti is a reporter with Politico. He's at Politico headquarters in Arlington, Virginia. And Steve Chigueras is our CBS News senior political editor. All right, Steve, let's start with you. What is the level of concern within the Republican Party about these delays in Donald Trump's appointments?
I'm not sure there's a huge amount of concern. I mean, there's no question that blowing up the process by getting rid of Chris Christie, who really sort of set up the transition, and replacing him with Mike Pence, and ushering out a lot of the ideas and people that Christie had brought in. That's obviously a huge setback in terms of moving forward with this transition. But at the same time, it's not like there isn't precedent for this. I mean, both Obama's administration, as they were coming in, and Bill Clinton's administration had similar type of personnel issues. The big question for Trump, I think, is that this is an outsider candidate. He's dealing with a lot of outsider mindset. There's not a lot of longtime government hands who are really involved with this. I mean, Pence, who did work on Capitol Hill, who was a member of Congress, has been in Indiana, the governor of Indiana. So he hasn't been in Washington for a bit. I think there's some concern that there's not as much institutional knowledge on the team, but at the same time, if you look at what Obama and what Bill Clinton did in their transition, I mean, they took a bit of time to name their first cabinet members. For Bill Clinton, it was about 5 weeks. For Barack Obama, it was about 3 weeks. So they're not necessarily behind it at this point. They do have to really get going 8 days in and still worrying about the behind-the-scenes stuff. Not necessarily the place you want to be, but I wouldn't say they've fallen completely behind and it's a disaster yet.
Gabe, let me ask you, Donald Trump has kept a low profile since last week. He sent some tweets and he ditched his press pool to go out for dinner in Manhattan on Tuesday. But what do you make of the fact that we haven't seen official public appearances by him?
Yeah, well, it's obviously something that a lot of people in Washington are starting to wonder about. I think to Steve's point, they really are scrambling behind the scenes to try and get as much done as possible. And it's clear that, President-elect Trump is talking to foreign leaders, talking to some of his advisors, trying to really set up the transition itself. So clearly he's a busy guy. But I think there are a lot of people in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party alike who are really waiting to hear from him. He obviously has had the 60 Minutes interview and has tweeted a few times. But what we haven't seen is some sort of address. And a lot of folks here in D.C. especially are saying, we're seeing some unrest, we're seeing some protests. People are clearly not happy with how this all shook out. This would be an obvious opportunity for the president-elect to get out there and sort of send a message to the public at large. And one thing that's pretty strange that's going to be happening tonight is Hillary Clinton will be giving a talk. She'll be speaking in Washington. That's not something that you would expect to see the vanquished, the loser of the campaign, speaking before the winner.
Steve, let me go back to this time frame on these Trump appointments. You basically said that when you look at precedent, it's not necessarily that this incoming administration is that far behind where other people were. At the same time, it was interesting. Joe Biden gave an interesting answer on Wednesday when asked if Trump's administration would be ready on day one. He said, no administration is ready on day one. So realistically, what might be the impact of this delay in appointments?
Yeah, well, there are thousands of positions to fill, right? So, I just, when he says they're not ready on day one, you're always behind the eight ball from the very beginning. It's a short period of time. It's 70-plus days from Election Day until the inauguration. And you are really, even though you had people working on this beforehand, you're still sort of not really thinking about transition until you're done with the campaign, until Election Day is over. I think in the case of the Trump folks, they didn't necessarily put as much thought into transition because they were really focused on campaign. They had a small number of folks in terms of their campaign. And so when it came time to focus on this, it was after the election, and then they sort of blew it up. So, you know, when Biden says, I think he's giving Trump a little bit of cover, but at the same time, I think it's fairly common to not expect these folks to be totally running at full speed from day one, mainly because of the sheer number of positions that need to be filled. You'll get the cabinet set up, but for the thousands of positions, there are going to be some positions left unfilled, and they'll get to those.
All right, Gabe DeBenedetti and Steve Jagaris, thank you both.
Thanks.